This is the second video on using Burr Tools to make caged burr puzzles, and today we're going to feature two puzzles by Stefan Baumiger of Puzzle Leisure called Arthur and Bedivere. Stefan Baumiger of Puzzle Leisure has designed a number of puzzles with a King Arthur theme. I've listed 4 or 5 here with various levels. You can purchase these puzzles through his Facebook site, Puzzle Leisure, and contact him just through a direct message. The wooden puzzles are beautifully made. You can also make these. Most of the ones I've listed here are available for definition on puzzlewillbeplayed.com. Except for Excalibur, these puzzles have what's called a trap burr, or a piece that doesn't come apart. In the Bedivere puzzle, it's just a straight rod. In Arthur, it's a little more complex. And we're going to use Burr Tools to see if we can handle solving this type of burr puzzle. Now, I've created my own type using, these two are in PETG, but you can use PLA. I've tried to maintain the original integrity of the look and feels. Instead of shields, I have glass discs, which are easy to obtain. You really don't need Burr Tools to make Bedivere, but we'll go through this process. Arthur, though, is more complicated with more parts, and you won't know how to assemble the 8 burrs, 8 or 9 burrs without the use of Burr Tools. The way I assembled the trap burr was to break it into 3 parts, just a simple rod, rectangular rod, which is chamfered here on the edges, and that prints very easily in a 3D printer. These discs will show how to order these if you want. They're very freely available on AliExpress, but there's just a disc holder, and I've used heat inserts, an M3 heat insert here. This is a M3 12mm grub screw. All it does is it screws into the end, so when I designed this part, there's a hole inside that you can screw the grub screw in. I think I have 4 or 5 millimeters here which extend, and they'll screw into here, and this disc will glue in just with a super glue. The glass inserts were easy to obtain. They were nice because they just glued in. You can get metal buttons. I tried to get discs that look like shields. Most of the cage burr puzzles I use are 2-part, and I use heat inserts, brass heat inserts. These are M3 to screw the pieces together, and this allows me a great way to reset the puzzle until I learn the disassembly. This is one of the main advantages of using Burr Tools. You can find out how to assemble the puzzle. So we'll look at using Burr Tools to handle this trap burr problem. However, Burr Tools will try to disassemble all parts, even if you group them together and try to indicate that they're not supposed to be disassembled. So just be aware of that. For instance, you couldn't put a simple rod in for that 9th piece because Burr Tools would be able to separate it from the cage, which you don't want. The first puzzle we'll look at is Bedivere. The definition is available on Puzzle Will Be Played. One problem is this definition gives you a mirror image of the cage, and so it won't give you the proper part. We'll look at what the proper part is, but just be aware that Puzzle Will Be Played is not always 100% accurate. Sometimes things get mirror imaged without the designer knowing it. We'll look at the Bedivere puzzle. We went over how to create puzzle pieces in the last video. You can see that in my collection of videos if you wish to review that. Under Entities, or S1, we'll look at, this is the very first part. These are very easy to create, so I've created these 4 parts according to the definition on the website. I've changed the captive burr a little bit. I made it 3 by 3 with the rod going through the middle. Now this is the cage, and if you follow the definitions here, you'll find you'll get a mirror image of where this little L is. And I tried for a number of hours to use that cage to solve it, which I couldn't until I realized that was happening. Here is the definition. This is layer 1. I'll show you the various layers. The pink is the solid. Everything else are white. The next layer is here. And if you follow that, you'll get the proper orientation of the cage. Now you have to create a result, what the result looks like when all the pieces are assembled in the puzzle, and that's S7. And what you'll notice here, although it's difficult to see with this color, is there's a square for this S5 piece here. So this is a 5 by 5 by 5 cube but with S5 it's 8, or sorry, 6 by 6 by 6, and with this here it's 8 on this axis because of the inclusion of S5. So what we're going to do is group S5 and S6 together and tell Burr Tools these shouldn't be separated. Now how we define this, if we look at the very first definition, here is where I've put that S5 part, the top of it. Now what you'll see here is this is where the L is, and what you'll notice is right here in this spot is the shaft of that, where that will go through the cage. And so we say that that has to be solid. This is the starting position. From here though, these all internally can be anything. And I'm going to change this right here and make these all variable voxels. So I've clicked here. So let's see if I have this right. These should all be variable voxels. And that just means for solution, they can be either solid or empty. For here, the outside of the puzzle though, this has to be where the shaft goes through, and these have to be empty. So as I move up, this is what the puzzle is going to look like. This is the shaft going through, these are the empty voxels, and this is the other end of that tool, of that S5 there. And you can see that's what that looks like. Now to create a puzzle, we click the puzzle tab and create a new puzzle. S7 is our result. We're going to set a result. And all plus 1 means it's going to bring all the parts in except for the result, which it does there. But under detail, I'm going to group S5 and S6 together. So using this detail tab, I'm going to add a group, which adds here. And under 5 and 6, all these parts belong to the group 0 by default. We're going to change this to a 1, this to a 1, just close, and now we'll see that Burr Tools definition for these two parts say that they belong to the same group. Now we're going to go to the solver. And just to assemble the parts, we'll prepare and start, and we'll see that we have a number of assemblies that can go together here. We can see all these assemblies. Now, they can't necessarily be disassembled. So to find out which ones can be disassembled, we'll click here. Now, the nice thing about having groups is that you'll see here that this cannot be removed from the cage. So you'd think Burr Tools may not be able to find a solution. But because you've grouped the cage burr and the cage, it'll just ignore disassemblies that try to remove those two. So we hit prepare, we hit start, and what we get are two solutions. And if you look at the level of the solution, and if you look here, they're pretty close to the same. This 11 is a 12, but on Puzzle Leisure site itself, this is switched to a 12, so that's the correct solution. And what's nice is that you can be confident that these are in the correct spot. So when you assemble your puzzle, you can get rid of the frame, get rid of the burr. You know that has to go down through the middle of the puzzle. We'll get rid of these two. And we can see that the dark blue and the green have to go like this in the puzzle. These are the next two which go together, and you can see the orientation. Then you can add the frame in to see where they go and how they're positioned. When all those parts are together, you can see there's a hole down here. So the starting position is with that S5 with the rod right through the middle or down through here, either way. So that's using Burr Tools to determine how to assemble the Bedivere. Let's look at the Arthur one, which is a little more complicated. The Arthur puzzle is more complicated to assemble, and so you need to use Burr Tools for this. There are 9 sticks to position. The trapped eyepiece is more complicated, and you wouldn't be able to figure out how to position this when you go to assemble. So we'll bring up Burr Tools and look at how this was created. S1 to S8 are all the parts, and they're just the parts as they're shown here. Nine I created as I did with the Bedivere with the rod in the middle. That's how I assembled it. So this is shown a little different than on Puzzle Will Be Played. My result then, when I tried to create this, was with that burr stick right in the middle of the T on both sides. But my problem was when I tried to solve this, yes, there were a lot of different assembly solutions. In fact, you can put this to the thousands. There are many ways this can be assembled, but not too many that it can be disassembled. And I couldn't find a solution with this position. And I pondered this for quite a while, because as I looked in the diagram here, this looked like it was in the middle. But as I look at this diagram, this looks like it is one step closer to this end here, up here. It is not right in the middle or the top of the T. So I went back to the puzzle and changed my definition here. Go back to entities. And I said, maybe this is down one step. So on both ends, I need to change this down one. And I also need to change where the shaft goes through. So here, this is solid and this is empty. Here, this is solid and this is empty. And for the result, I have all the rest as variable voxels right in the middle. Except on the edges here, they have to be empty. So if I see the result, these have to be empty voxels, as you'll see here when you're building. Now when I solve this and hit the disassembly, I did find a solution, just one. 53, 16, 5, 6, 53, 16, 5, 3. Pretty close. That looks like the intended solution. What's nice here is that you can now position these burrs. Now there's 8 burrs here. They are more difficult to position. It took me maybe 5 to 10 minutes to sort of assemble them all. But if I look at just one side, you can blow this up and you can see how these 4 are positioned. You can get them into a position, then you can add the other 4 looking at the assembly. Get rid of some of the wires. So you can look at how some of these others are assembled, and within 5 or 10 minutes you can get the 8 of these assembled properly. And then put them into your frame and screw it down. You can also find a solution if you get stuck, although I tend not to use Burr Tools for solution if I can avoid it. Just trying to get everything here. And you can see with the solution it can give you a hand if you get stuck at getting, remember there are quite a few steps before you remove the first part. And so you can go through that here. That's a look at using Burr Tools to create more complicated burr puzzles. And we took a look at 2 of the King Arthur themes from Stefan Baumegger of Puzzle Leisure.